All right. Who's next?
Let's do Karen.
Ooh, Karen in California. Karen, you're live with Eric and V.
Hi, Eric. Hi, V. How you doing?
Doing well.
good.
Your volume's just really high. We're going to turn you down for just a second.
Okay.
Very good.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I think I just jumped out of my seat a little bit. What did you want to talk about today?
I wanted to. V took some of my arguments and did a good job about the stand your ground thing. But this is about abortion again.
Okay.
I'm an atheist and I'm pro-abortion rights.
Okay.
But I'm upset at the way that I've seen the portrayal of pro-abortion arguments. I think we have to get away from this whole thing about personhood. And let me let me be clear, because I'm going to get some shit for this. I am a speciesist. So if I had to choose between saving my dog or child, I would save the child. Okay. So I'm not saying that I would choose animals.
Karen?
But. Yeah.
Please, we're already going to get the abortion, but if we also get the vegan stuff, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself.
We're going to have lots of angry comments, and we love it. We feed off of them. Give them to us.
Oh,
Karen,
they're vitamins for me.
I agree with you. I think that a lot of the arguments that atheists use about abortion are not convincing, and also take for granted that the other person thinks a lot of the same things, and so they miss the mark entirely. How do you frame it for yourself?
For myself, I know that each person has to put a value. Like, for example, we might put a value on sentient beings. Well, then we shouldn't be using nets and trapping dolphins. We know they're sentient. And we shouldn't be killing elephants. So we have to put value on life and decide, and we have to rank it. And I'm sorry, but the woman's body and her life will always rank higher to me than a sperm, an egg, a zygote, an embryo, or a fetus. Viability changes things. It used to be so simple. When they take their first breath, they get rights as a child, period. They don't have as many rights as an 18-year-old or a 21-year-old, but they have a lot of rights of protection once they take that first breath. But now we've changed it to viability, and we have to estimate it. So it's tough. I'm not saying it's easy, but we have to rate value. We cannot assume any kind of personhood. Just like if we have to put dogs down because we have too many, we do. We know they're more sentient than a fetus, but we put them down because we have too many.
That's a good point. I think it's interesting to hear you say this, Karen, because this was kind of going through my mind as well. And it's an uncomfortable truth that we do this. Like,
Yeah, we do.
Should we do this? I don't know. Is there a better way to do this? Again, I don't know. But we do, right? There is a difference between a baby that is 3 weeks old and a fetus that is 3 weeks away from being born. Like, there are differences that we put on. Are they arbitrary? Yes, a lot of the time they are, but
A lot of times it is.
yeah.
I think we're mixing rights and protections.
Right.
Oh, you like this, don't you?
I do.
Well, I mean, I think it goes either way. Like, whether we're talking about, rights and or protections, what we're doing is we are saying there is an allotted number of rights and protections, and you get 2, and you get 5, and you get 8.
Well, like, you don't have protections.
Right.
Right, you have rights. You're viewed as a being that inherently has these values that are inalienable, or at least are supposed to be. But a protection is something that we provide, animals in a protected environment, right? Or when you're talking about dogs, right? Dogs have protections. We have a responsibility to the dogs. We're not treating them as if they have rights. It's a difference, and it's something that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but we need to recognize that when we're viewing something as how we should treat something, that's a protection. When we're viewing how a thing is treated because it inherently has this kind of, that's a right. And so I would draw the distinction there.
Well, I think...
I get you.
Yeah. Karen, what are your thoughts?
Go ahead, Reed.
I just think that regardless of which word we use, the basis, the bedrock of this conversation is, unfortunately, we are not able to come up with a better way of doing things than to put two things against each other and say, which is more important to me, right? And that's where all of this discomfort comes from, because we all know that that feels weird and that feels wrong, but we don't really have a better option. So exactly, Karen, when somebody comes to me and says, hey, there are two lives at stake here. One is a fully formed 30-something-year-old person with an entire history and relationships and consciousness, and the other is a fetus. I'm going to put weight on one over the other. And the only difference between my putting weight on one over the other and a theist is that they flip it for some reason. And they say the fetus is more important. And so that's actually a really great way to start that conversation, because then we can just get right to the point. Okay, I think this one is more important. You think this one is more important. Why? And then have that conversation. That's a very interesting attempt.
It also comes down to, I realize an infant can't take care of itself, but with any other human, they can help to keep an infant alive. But you cannot have a non-viable fetus take care of itself if for some reason it got cut out of the body, like someone does, did a cesarean. There's no way a non-viable fetus can survive. So it's dependent. And dependency then puts, it depends on the one who it's dependent on. And I'm sorry, but it's dependent on someone whose body has changed, emotions have changed, and has so much responsibility once it becomes viable that, I just think it's unfair to think that dependent being that's not a fully formed fully formed human in any way, it should have more to say than the person who is the provider.
I would push back a little bit on the dependency element, because then I think a lot of the conversation is then going to go into, well, what about somebody with special needs?
Someone in a coma,
someone end of life who needs hospice care. So like we do get into this area where, again, ultimately, if we had to save two people and we had to sacrifice one, we're always going to have to make that distinction, right? Every single time. And that's what makes fiction so interesting, because that's every single story. But I would stay away from that. Yeah.
I will push back on that, because once they've taken a breath, everything changes. Everything goes in their favor. Once they've taken the breath away.
Well, but you drew a distinction away from breath and about dependence. And so the idea that got brought up was the idea of somebody who's entirely dependent for their life and someone who's not, and how that valuation changes. And how sticky and really icky that gets. And I do not have I don't have the strength today, Karen. I just
honestly though,
I don't.
I really loved this conversation, because it has given me a new way of looking at the conversation with a theist, and maybe moving away from the, well, is abortion like murder or not, and more towards the, okay, we all do this valuation of individual lives. This is how I'm evaluating these lives. How are you doing that? And what's your reasoning behind it? That's a really good call, Karen. Yeah.
Nice. Karen, thank you for calling in.
Oh, you're welcome. It was nice talking with you guys.
Nice talking to you too. Take care. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, one more?
Yeah, that was an uncomfortable call, but kind of in a good way.
The only thing that made me feel uncomfortable is when you move into the dependent kind of like that is a really gnarly road to go down.
Yeah.
And
but in general, if calls can make me feel like, oh, I need to sit with this and think about exactly where my morality fits on this new idea, like that's always exciting for me. So
nice.
Thanks, Karen.